Good afternoon. My name is Jay, and welcome to Real Men, Real Talk, Raw. I am so excited to have a special guest on this afternoon. It is Sunday afternoon in the United States. If you're coming in from overseas, if it's in the middle of the night and you're catching us, thank you for being here. If you can't make it live, it's okay. We'll have replay. You can catch us. I want to thank you for joining us. If you're live, feel free to hit like, hit love, share comments. If you have any questions for myself or my special guest, Jessica Alstrom, please feel free to do so. And we'll both work really hard to respond after the show and answer as many questions and comments as we can. Without further ado, Jessica Alstrom, you have made history today.
I have.
You are the first woman to be a guest on this show. And I am so excited to share this space with you today. It was suggested to me to have you on a show, and I had watched you on a few different shows. I watched your show with Karen Palmer, who's part of the Spiritually Gone Wild family, as well as Deb Garcia, the Spark the Vibe G girl.
Yeah.
And I was taken away by some of the conversations you had. And when Deb said, you got to have Jessica on, I'm like, but this is a real man, real talk. It's not about women. And she said, oh, but you got to have her on. And so I am so excited to have you here. And I believe she's right. You know, we just spent the last 30 minutes having a conversation between the two of us. And my God, you are just such an amazing young lady. And I say that in a respectful way. You're young because you're younger than I am. So what I'd like to do is invite you to, let's get this show going. Let's just jump into it. I'd like to ask you to share a little bit about your past and when your awakening came in your life. But if you could go back a little ways and share what led up to your awakening, share some of your story, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, no, thank you. I feel honored to be here. And I think that, you know, as the consciousness movement excels, that the gap between, you know, labels and gender is we really need each other. Men need women and women need men, because, you know, we're really all in this together. So I'm honored to be on the show. As far as my background, it's funny, I don't talk about it much because I've been doing this professionally for so long that, you know, in the beginning you talk about your past and it seems like such a distant memory for me now because I've worked through so much. But, you know, I had one of the more difficult childhoods. I had the very, very extremely abusive home. I was the middle child. I was the only girl out of two boys, and I dealt with a lot of different, lots of different types of abuse. Let's just put it that way, not to air the dirty laundry all over the public, but, you know, everything you could imagine that a child shouldn't have to see or witness or do, I was pretty much, you know, the volunteer by default. So by the time I was about 15 years old, I had chronic depression. I had chronic body problems, all sorts of urinary tract disorders. I had a raging eating disorder, and I was sick all the time. I had migraines. I had aches and pains. I came from a very kind of dysfunctional family that was very into some interesting cult ideas, and what that cult was about basically living in poverty. And so we weren't allowed to go to doctors. We weren't allowed to really entertain outside influences. We weren't allowed to really have friends that weren't in alignment with what we were doing in the home. And it definitely can throw you into a lot of mental illness. And I would say that I was extremely mentally ill by the time I was like 15 or 16 years old. And of course, you know, what do you do when you're like that and you finally get an opportunity to run away from home? You know, you run into pregnancy, which is exactly kind of what I did. Was I became a very young mother. I became a mother at 20, and I kind of ran away from home, and I became a nanny, and I worked as a nanny to just kind of put myself through school and like keep myself fed. took care of babies. That was something that just always came super intuitive to me with children and animals. I was a very kind of aware child, and I think honestly the reason why I'm alive today is because from a really early age, I really learned how to read people. And, you know, I would watch body language, I would watch heart rate, I would watch everything around me. And it wasn't really because I wanted to, it was constantly to avoid danger, to avoid a conversation, to avoid abuse. And I didn't really realize it, but I was becoming kind of a psychic kid by default of just being in this highly survival-based world that I was living in. I had to be super, super aware all the time. So after I had my first baby, you know, I basically started to follow in the parents' footsteps and just became chronically broke and more sick and more disconnected. And, you know, obviously didn't stop there. So I had baby number 2 and just kept going until finally I kind of put my life a little bit back together and I started to distance myself from my family. And my family is amazing. I have nothing bad to say about them. But to me, you know, it's all about perspective. And sometimes when you're in a toxic situation, the only thing that you can do to kind of get some space around that or to understand that is to put some space there. And so when I started to put a little bit of space between me and my codependency, you know, I didn't really learn any life skills. I was kind of taught to, you know, just exist and survive versus I didn't have dance classes. I didn't get to do what a lot of other kids got to do. But my mind was really sharp. And by the time I was about 22, I decided that, you know, I was going to jump into the sales world. But biochemistry and science was always like this secret passion of mine. I loved the way the body worked. I loved the way the mind worked. I didn't understand any of it at the time, but I knew that that was going to be a passion of mine. Just being able to read people and understand why people behaved the way they did. And for some reason, I understood why people did what they did. It was like I've never really been able to judge people's behavior, even when it was directed at me. That was something that I've always had with me. I understood why they were doing what they were doing. And so that was kind of difficult to, you know, not ever be able to really hate anybody or hold a grudge against anybody. But by the time I was about 30, you know, I was living in Los Angeles. That's where I was raised, and, you know, taking care of now 3 kids. And husband number 2, and we were working in the real estate market, which we all know that it very soonly crashed after that. And I happened to be a part of that crash because I had finally kind of built my life up into this faux success of what, you know, Hollywood should look like. And, you know, we had the money and we had the car and we had the house and I had the kids and I had the husband, and I was dying inside. I was miserable. I didn't even know what it felt like to be happy, you know, and I thought that if I got all of these things, that would equal happiness. So I was like chasing this material world constantly and chasing these faux relationships and chasing these faux friendships. And all along, I was just becoming numb. And I realized in like 2008 that I was becoming so numb that I was going to have 2 things happen. I was either going to have to get on some sort of medication so that I could see my children as who they were, or I was going to end it. And I knew I wasn't going to end my life because I was a mom. And, you know, my kids were the rock that has kept me here since I've been 20 years old. Because trust me, it's crossed my mind thousands of times. If you guys weren't here, I'd be out of here. You know, it's like, this is just too much. And the market crashed, and we got a phone call basically that we were going to lose everything, the house, the cars. And it was weird because in that moment of losing everything, I almost had this like tiny sense of peace. And I don't know where it was coming from, but for the first time in my life, I fell to my knees and I prayed. And I wasn't raised with any religion. I was taught not to believe in God, basically, or believe in anything outside of myself. You know, it was all about me. And I just sat there and I cried and I said, I just need some help. Like, there's got to be more to life than this. And it was the next day that I don't remember, somebody put a book in my hand, and I opened it up and I read 2 sentences from this book, and it says, your thoughts create your reality and the answers lie within. And I shut the book and I said, that is the truest information I've ever read in my entire life, and I don't need any more. And I began this experimental quest with myself. Well, if that's true, and I change my thoughts, then my life should change. And if that's true, and the answer's inside of me, then all of my genius must be in here too. There must be a PhD inside of here. It's not going to be in a book. And so I began this like 5-year experiment on myself where I tested the law of attraction, I tested the law of reflection, and every time I showed up for myself, my reality would just spontaneously change. And things started to change pretty quickly for me, but I was still in kind of this toxic environment. And I'm a big, I work with a lot of veterans for PTSD, and I understand that PTSD is not just about, something that happened 20 years ago. It's about power of influence in our environment. And I realized that my environment was still very toxic. And, the smell of my street and the way my house felt and the clothes that I were wearing, they were all that PTSD reminder of who I was before, and I needed a clean slate. So with everything lost, separated from the husband, I basically had $90 to my name, and I somehow got an airline ticket from my long lost father that I had just met to Kansas City, which was the only state in the entire United States that I actually had a family member. And me and my 3 daughters and $90, I had no checking account, I had no car, I had no resources, I had nothing. But I knew that if I didn't get out of the toxic environment that I was in, I was never really going to be able to heal myself completely. Because I would take 10 steps forward and I would take 10 steps back. That environment it pulls you back in. And I wasn't strong enough emotionally or physically to get myself out of it. So I needed that clean slate. And even though that clean slate was basically nothing, like I had nothing. My daughters had no idea how little money we had. But I just had those 2 statements in my head: thoughts create reality and the answers are inside of me. And I just kept saying those things over and over again until I somehow believed it. Long story short, if we had more time, I could tell you the whole story. But long story short, within 6 months of arriving in Kansas City, I owned my own nutrition bar. And it was a little mom and pop shop where I sold supplements and products and did intuitive coaching. And I was able to close my office at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and go pick up my kids from school and go back and open it. And I was making a living, and we had a place to live. And it was like within 6 months of that experiment, my life began to just transform. And it was just like magic. Now, obviously,
Ask you this: that happened because you changed your perspective, or because you detached from a toxic environment?
both. And I think it's important to realize that we are chemical, emotional, and physical beings. So if we master something emotionally, we have to also master it physically and chemically, which means that, I can break up with my boyfriend, but if I keep listening to the music, I'm going to be re-stimulated into that relationship, because there's something we call quantum entanglement. And it is the 5 senses, they continue to captivate you in your pain and trauma. So just because you get out of a relationship does not mean the relationship doesn't come with you. I always teach that you can't outrun yourself. So you've got to do the work both physically, emotionally, and chemically, which means the chemicals are the mindsets, because that's what produces the hormones that make you feel the way you feel. So for me, it wasn't enough to just do the mindset work, because I was so indoctrinated in my environment and I was so codependent on my family unit. Now, that's what worked for me. That was probably the chicken way to go, because I probably could have mastered this staying in that environment. But for me, it was almost like I needed to totally reinvent myself. I needed someone to not know my name and then associate a story with my name. Because you know how it is, you run into someone at the grocery store and they're like, "Oh, how's your husband?" And then you have to say, "Well, we're not married anymore." And then that pulls your vibration down, and then you're doing small talk. It's like I wanted to go where nobody knew me. And my level of illness was so, I had autoimmune disease. I had chronic depression. I had chronic migraines. I had horrible menstrual cycles. You name it, I was going through all of it.
What was your
It was fibromyalgia.
Which is not uncommon for a lot of women.
But you know what? It's pain. It's like the most excruciating pain. And when I started to kind of dive down deep into my emotional psyche about what that disease was telling me, it was telling me that I had rejected myself. And even by me running away to Kansas City was another form of rejection, but it did create time and space for me to be able to get perspective. It's like you don't know you're in a forest and if you're in the forest. So my healing journey really came from when I could get space from the stories. You know, even being reminded all the time that I was sick made me more sick. You know, it was like
I refer to that as the life sentence, that when Western medicine and doctors give us the diagnosis, it's the life sentence, and then that becomes our identity.
well, think about it. We buy into it. So we invest in the story. And if we buy into it, then it becomes us, because we're basically held together through belief systems. So the more I buy into my disease, the bigger I create it. You know, the more I buy into my childhood story, which is probably funny because I haven't told this story about my childhood in like years. So telling you it feels so like a different lifetime, you know?
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for sharing that part of your life, because this is Real Men, Real Talk, Raw. And I honor you for being willing to be vulnerable here.
Oh, absolutely.
I really appreciate you today for that. And as you shared it, I could feel the pain. You know, it's how could you not?
You know, to me, it's about turning pain into purpose. And there's a little girl inside of me that has become a warrior and an advocate and a messenger. And, you know, there's a little Joan of Arc in there now that says, you know, the strongest soldiers choose the biggest battles and the hardest journeys. And it's really about owning that and knowing that all of that childhood was a huge blessing for me. You know, I wouldn't change any of it, because I wouldn't be sitting here, you know, teaching in 106 countries, about to go on a worldwide tour, if I would have come from a feathered nest. You know, if I might just be, you know, worrying about the next outfit to wear, or, you know, the next TV show to watch. But it's like that pain birthed a huge purpose. I mean, look at the show that you're doing right now, Real Men, Real Talk. It's like, this is come from your pain. Your purpose is birthed through our pain. And if we looked at suffering as purpose in disguise, we could get so much power out of it. And so it's like milking it and not being a victim of it, but be a victor of the stories of the past. And it's like, the coolest thing about my childhood is it's given me two amazing gifts that I could never, ever learn in a book. It's the ability to never judge another, and the ability for absolute compassion, because I've walked in your shoes. You know, when you and I have gone through the childhoods that we've gone through, and someone tells us their horrible story or something that they did when they were out of alignment with themselves or unaware, we don't even flinch. We're like, well, yeah, that's just what you do when you had the life that we've had. It's just like the common denominator of how life works out. You know, hurt people hurt people. And, you know, I wasn't always on the side of being the hurt kid, because I took that and began to hurt others, manipulated them. You know, it was like we use our powers how we're taught to use them.
Survival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I realized there was a different way, and there was a child inside of there that just wanted to be seen and heard and loved and felt safe, I was like, you know what? I bet you other people feel like this. And as I began to heal my own body, I began to get very inspired to help other people do it, because it was almost like the less I tried to heal and the more I began to get to know myself, the faster I healed. Because it's almost like everything in the universe is a paradox, because it's duality. So if I focus on healing, I'm actually focused on the illness. It's like I have to focus on the healed parts of me. And I have to make those parts of me bigger and use those as the potential to then get the other parts of me that are unhealed in alignment. Because again, what we focus on, we get. If I focus on my headache, I become my headache. So if I focus on the fact that my legs are working great and can still get me up that mountain, I'm going to focus on celebrating my legs and tell my brain, hey, look, there's a party going on here. You can get on board. And there's a lot of mental techniques that I now teach all over the world about quantum focus, because we have the power within us to decide and choose every moment who we want to be. The universe is just merely reflecting back to us who we believe that is. And, I don't want to be a survivor my whole life. It's like when you're a child of abuse, you get labeled survivor. Well, and I love that. But at the same time, I love to say, you know what? I have a divine purpose that will leave a legacy for my children's 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 because of that pain. And that feels pretty good. It's like, what do we do in this moment now with that? And that's, to me, what this whole journey is all about.
Would you mind sharing your healing and your diet? How did you share with me before the show that you actually healed your medical diagnoses? How did that happen?
Well, again, I realized that we're energy first and material second. So the energy world comes first, and matter is created out of energy. So I wasn't going to be able to fix an energetic problem in the material world. I was going to have to go back to the roots. So anytime you want to actually pull something or clear something or heal something, you can't do it on the surface because it will just continue to grow. So I knew that I had to find the root of this. And understanding how kind of, and Louise Hayes has a great book, How to Heal Your Life, and all of these books about, understanding what your body's constantly telling you. And there's enough emotional guidance coming to the body that I knew intuitively that all autoimmune disease comes from self-rejection, because your immune system's job is to be your army, and that is you. So you're fighting against you. And when I put that metaphor together, I was like, oh my gosh, the only thing I need to stop is this war going on inside of me. When I stop this war going on inside of me, of this self-loathing, this self-rejection, this self-denial, the comparison, the blame, the shame, the guilt, all the things we pick up from childhood, when I stopped doing that to myself and I started being my own partner, and I started being my own best friend and my advocate. I'm kind of a parentless child. So I had to become my own father. I had to become my own mother. I had to become my own hero. I had to become my own best friend. I had to pick myself up when I fell. I had to take care of myself when no one was around, which was a lot of my life. And I realized that the pep talks that I needed were not coming from my ego. They needed to come from a higher place within me. Because the pep talks your ego give you are basically pretty critical judgments about yourself. It's like, but there's another voice. And we call it the higher self or the super consciousness that is there to go, you know what, you did your best today. You showed up. You chose a different path. And that was the voice I decided to listen to and get to know, because that was a voice that I always was like, no, I'm not worthy enough to listen to that voice, or I don't deserve to have anything because of, things I've done or things that I've been experiencing. I don't deserve love because, I'm this kid with this story. And when I started actually showing that to myself, and I came up with 4 power frequencies that basically take you right into self-love. And those are the same frequencies that attract your soulmate. And those 4 frequencies is that you got to be loyal to yourself first. In this kind of world we live in, we're trained, indoctrinated to be loyal to everyone else's journeys before ourselves. We're not loyal to what it is we need and want at a cellular level, at an atomic level, at a physical level. We choose everyone else's needs and wants first. And that creates more separation of self. The second one is to be in a compromise with yourself, which means understand that there's voices inside of you that have been programmed from the past, and they need to be listened to, they need to be heard, and they need to be loved. They don't need to be judged, which means even the ego inside of us It's literally like you're a bullied, abused inner child speaking out. It's a tantrum. And if you listen to the tantrum, you understand the behavior is just about needing to be seen and heard. And so I began to get to know who my ego was. And my ego was, in need of control. And that's where the eating disorder came from. The intense self-pressure I was putting on myself, that's where the headaches were coming from. And the horrible self-talk, that's where the autoimmune system was coming from. And so I got to know this ego, and I basically just listened, and I allowed my ego to have its voice. And I gave my ego healthy projects, because ego loves the material world and it loves control. So I would give it healthy projects. We're going to go work out. We're going to do this. And it sounds silly, but it actually works fabulously. And then I began practicing, because that is the number one thing that's missing in the spiritual journey is that you read the book, you take the course, you get the certification, and then you do your next course, you take your next certification. You don't practice. So I began to practice self-love, which means I had to learn the word no. I had to learn no thank you. And one of the things that I teach big time in my academy is that you never, ever, ever, ever say the word no to yourself. It is always a yes, soon, a yes, when, a yes, soon. It's like there's never this no, because that's how we shut down from ourselves, is that word. Is if I constantly tell myself no, then my body's going to start telling me no. The world's going to tell me no. My bank account's going to tell me no. And my whole intention of being on this planet is to be free. So I call it the yes healing, saying yes to everything it is you need and want within yourself. And you learn to say no thank you with compassion to other people that are needing you for their journey. Because we all have this intuitive guidance system. And sometimes us doing it for others enables them to turn theirs on. So we're doing them a huge disservice by being the advocate of their journey, when I've got to make sure that I am just the example. The only way that I could ever act as a guru would be to be a living example of joy, a living example of happiness. I can't teach you something you don't already know, right? And that was it.
I'm going to stop you right now. Breath here. Two things that I want to share. One is I'm going to ask you to repeat what was behind the autoimmune, because this country, the United States, has got an epidemic that's out of control. The amount of people, and we're getting younger. We got teenagers being diagnosed with autoimmunes today. I would like you to repeat that. Yeah. But I also, the other part is, I want to make sure that the men that are listening to this understand what the four energies that you're just describing now are so powerful. And that's huge. And the other part is, when you mentioned all the certifications mean nothing if we're master gurus, but we're not a master guru of our own lives. We're just pushing out information and knowledge that we've obtained. But if we're not walking it and we're not living our life in a healthy way that we understand it needs to be, then we're just talking it. And that's not, there's a lack of authenticity for ourselves in that. But that's the challenge for a lot of people that are highly educated, that, and it's not, I'm not coming from a judgmental place. It's really from just a place of awareness. But I understand today that we're all right where we're at in our own journeys. But can you just repeat, what do you think was behind the autoimmune?
The autoimmune fibromyalgia specifically was created by self-hate, honestly. And it came from a deep place of shame and guilt and a lot of grief. And so I teach about 6 frequencies that hold your body underwater from healing. And they are shame, guilt, humiliation, resentment, fear, and the big one is grief. And what is grief? Grief is homeless love. When we lose someone or we lose the idea of someone, our love doesn't have a home, and that breaks our bodies down so quickly. We don't really realize it. So for me, growing up the way that I was trained to grow up was to basically deny self, deny my own opinion. You know, it was like the way I wanted to live and the way that I wanted to be free, I wasn't allowed. So I turned the pain inwardly because I'm a compassionate, empathic being, and I didn't want to force and perpetrate that pain on others. So autoimmune disease is about pushing the pain that we're feeling inside of us instead of it pushing it on others. So I describe the ego has two personalities, the perpetrator and the victim. So there's a lot of people who don't get sick in their body, but they're horrible to other people. They're very narcissistic, they're sociopathic. They don't get autoimmune disease. The reason why we get autoimmune disease is because we're pushing that behavior. We're sociopathic to ourselves. We become the narcissist of ourselves. We became in an abusive, toxic relationship with ourselves. And our immune system, if you understand how epigenetics works, is listening to every thought in our minds and is saying, oh, okay, we're the enemy of ourselves. Let's turn that immune system forward towards us and start attacking ourselves. And that's what happens is slowly but surely the gut shuts down and this shuts down and the brain-body connection is all out of alignment and the nervous system is in fight or flight so much that it can't get back online and heal and soothe itself anymore. And it's all coming from basically the belief that I am turning my pain inwardly. That's what autoimmune is. And that can't be healed by diet alone, but it is 50% just because of the intention that I am taking care of myself for now. Because see, the thing is all this amazing healing that you've done, you're 50% of the way there or 60% of the way there because you're choosing to take care of yourself. You weren't doing that before. And that's an act of self-love, which begins to heal the body. Because self-care and self-nurturing is an act of grace. It's an act of love. And it takes a lot to care for ourselves. It's so much easier to care for others. You know, so that is what autoimmune is in a nutshell, is just the pain and hatred that you feel you're projecting inwardly instead of outwardly.
And so I'm going to allow you to get back to how did you heal your autoimmune? It's the four energies. Is that primarily it?
The four energies. And this is the thing, and this is really a powerful statement for men too, because, we have this tendency to project what it is we believe is good and right out on the world, and men and women do this. So the four frequencies are loyalty to self, compromise of self, communication with self, which means I teach me, myself, and I, my ego, my body, my soul, right? There's three aspects, the I am, the body, which is the mediator between ego and the soul and the ego. And the three of us have to communicate, which means we have to be in unity of self, right? So we've got those three frequencies, and the number one frequency that has to be in alignment is you need to be attracted to yourself. Those are the four frequencies of self-love, and that in turn actually attracts a soulmate, because when you are your own soulmate, you are now the vibration of a soulmate. And believe it or not, most people want to be attracted to someone else, but they're not attracted to themselves, right? Think about how important that is, to be proud of yourself, to be important to yourself. And this isn't arrogant. This isn't arrogant that's hiding insecurity. This is, I want to be proud of myself when I close my eyes at night. I want to know that it's not just a physical thing that I look, but that I put work into this piece of art that I'm wearing. I want to feel good for me. And how I present myself to myself is how I present myself to the world, because most of us walk around with a mask. And then what do? We attract other people wearing a mask, don't we? So if I'm wearing a mask, I'm going to attract someone with a mask, and then I'm going to be blindsided. Oh, I didn't know he lived a double life, and he started off so great. Well, so did you. It's like attraction of self, being proud of yourself, caring about the way that you look and feel, not from a vain perspective, but from a divinity and self-grace perspective.
Exactly.
It's like enjoying who you're with. It's like when I haven't felt lonely in years because I like the person that I am, and when you have those four frequencies, it takes a lot to become loyal to yourself. It takes a lot to, go ahead.
Once you figured that out, how long did it take you to fully heal? How long did that process take?
You know, I healed my autoimmune disease in less than 3 months. Completely. I have no symptoms. And to this day, that was in 2010. And I haven't had one bout of it. I haven't had one issue, because I know that if I don't take care of myself, you know, and I don't honor this relationship that I'm in with me, then my body's going to fall out of alignment. And it's going to show me real quick where I'm out of alignment. And then I just get right back online. You know, it's really easy to fix.
How easy is it to have time for yourself as a single mom with 4 children ranging in age from the oldest 23 and the youngest, I believe you said, was 3? 5.
Well, my 2 older girls, yeah.
Yeah. All of us have it. I don't have time. Like, I'm working. I got 4 kids to raise. I'm a single mom, or I'm a single dad raising my kids.
Well, you're a single mom and dad, right? Yeah.
Exactly. But how did you have the time to do this work on yourself?
Well, I will tell you that my parenting is completely unorthodox, and the unawakened community would probably shun me if they heard this conversation. But I will tell you that, you know, when I am healthy, then I am a good example for my children to learn how to do things on their own.
Exactly.
So my life comes before my children. And I know that sounds horrible, but my well-being and my self-nurturing, they come before my children. And the reason why is because if you look in the animal kingdom, the mother basically, from example, teaches the babies how to behave based in her behavior. So if I sit and don't take care of myself, and I don't honor myself, and I don't put myself first at all, and then I tell my kids, you can be anything you say you are, put your mind to anything, I'm lying to them. You know, I'm actually not walking my talk. I'm not living as an example. So I'm running 5 different companies right now, and I'm raising kids. And my kids are kind of spread out all over the place because they're raised now, but they're still very much part of my life. And I will tell you that the way that I parent is that I look at my children as my teachers. It keeps me very humble, and it keeps me very, very present. I don't take any of their behavior personally at all, because it's not about me. From the moment they're born, their entire intention is to become independent. So why would I want to stop that independence by creating codependence? Inherently, we don't know fear. Fear is taught. The body understands danger at a young age, but fear is taught. So I decided not to instill fear, but instead teach about cause and effect, right? Compromise and consideration, and about, instead of discipline, looking at contribution. So I parent very differently. I don't discipline, I create contribution. That keeps entitlement from being an issue. You know, when you do too much for your kids, they forget how much work it takes you to give them those things. So constant contribution. And in the energy world, as a healing practitioner, you understand that it's a give and receive of energy constantly, right? If I give too much, then I become imbalanced. See, the giving is the divine feminine, and the getting is the divine masculine. And when one of those is out of alignment, my health drops out, my abundance drops out, my money line drops out. So it's my job to keep this really amazing flow going in my life. So when my son says, Mom, can you do this for me? I say, so I'll do this for you. What can you give to me? So it's a constant give and receive. And he never turns into that idealistic ego mentality where the world owes us anything. And therefore,
that statement kind of feels like conditional love.
Yeah.
As opposed to unconditional love. Can you respond to that?
So, see, here's the thing. Love has nothing to do with doing. It has nothing to do with what I give. It's a state of being. Love is a state of being. He doesn't have to do anything, but what I'm teaching him how to is breathe. Can you do an in breath without an out breath? No, it takes those two parts to be well and heal. So it's not like give me something. I mean, I just say share something, because now we're giving and receiving, because this universe is built on cause and effect. And there's a lot of takers out there and there's a lot of givers out there, and they're both sick. But the ones who are very healthy in the giving and the receiving, they stay balanced. And balance is what neutralizes duality, right? So my son, he's 5, right? And so contribution is teamwork. It's not me, it's we. So that my parenting philosophy is it's not me, it's we. So I don't really feel like this big burden is on my shoulders. You know, my daughter's 23 years old, and I've always just instilled that we're a team, and it takes a village, and we all have to do this together. And so what I'm good at and where my genius is, I will provide, and what you're good at and your genius is, then you can provide. And so she'll call me on the phone and say, oh, Mom, I overdrafted my account. I'm a little short for school books, $100, but let me come over and detail your car and blah, blah, blah. She's 23 and that's her mentality. There's no, Mom, can I borrow $100? There's, you know what? Let me do something nice for you. And I will tell you that my children are absolutely the most grateful kids on the planet, because they understand what it means to give and receive. Because it's great to give it's great to give, but a lot of light workers have a hard time receiving. Have you noticed?
Yeah.
So it's not about the unconditional. Did that make sense now what I'm saying?
I'm sorry. I was going to say the kids that are not being raised the way you are, a lot of them come from a space of entitlement because they're not giving anything back in return.
Well, and you know what? We've done that from a loving place, because our generation, we came from lack. So we want to create huge abundance in our kids' lives. We don't want them to worry. We want to give them all the things we didn't have. We don't want them to want for anything. But what we don't realize about the internal guidance system, which is the intuition, is that has to come from a desire. Desire instills genius. If I don't ever want anything, I never have to figure out how to problem solve. If Mom is always figuring out how to solve my problems, I never have to figure out how to solve my problems.
So when your 10-year-old comes to you and says, well, either they come to you and ask you your opinion, or you see them doing something that intuition's telling you is not either right for them or is going to lead them down a bad path, give me an example of how you respond in that moment. Either one or both.
With the whole going down the bad path, I believe that the road to self-love is a dark place. And I believe that mistakes need to be made in order for awareness to occur. So I never try to break their fall. I never try to stop that choice, because the only thing we ever own on this planet is choice. And choice creates huge amounts of abundance when you understand that you have choice. Like, I'm a millionaire because I have a million choices. It's like this idea of choice. And I always say, well, what choices do you have? So I ask intuitive questions. I never give advice. My questions are, what choices do you have? What makes your heart feel alive? What makes your soul come alive? Which one scares you? Which one expands you? Which one contracts you? And I let them answer. And sometimes they still make the bad choice. And I go, absolutely. Because look at all the bad choices I had to make to get where I am. And I'm fine. So my thing is, call me at 2 a.m. I'll be there with no judgment. I'll let you vent. I'll sit with you in the dark. But I'm never going to tell you you're wrong. And I'm never going to tell you you're dumb. I'm going to tell you need to have that experience. And you know what? Because I've always had that philosophy, my kids have never needed that. They've always just looked at choice because they've always had choice. I think when we take choice away from kids is when they rebel and they go and do things that are outside of their own alignment because they need to feel choice.
You know,
So
it's
it's
funny you're talking about choice. This is how we were aligned today. 2 hours ago, I pushed out a blog, and it's about choices. It's about
awesome.
and so. And the second thing I want to say is, you are just an amazing mom. I
Thank
don't need
you.
your kids to know that your strategy and how you are raising your beautiful 4 children, and you got your son. You had 3 daughters, and then you got your son last. Yeah,
And I
I
will
got
tell
three
you,
sons. I
oh
never got,
my goodness,
but it's
he
okay.
is he is my heart. Yes, there's just something about mothers and son. Like I, when he was born, all my psychic gifts came through. Like I began all understanding the universe. And there's this magical soul connection that we have. I mean, I have it with all my kids, but for some reason with my son, there is just this, and I think it's that divine masculine that I really needed to heal in my life that I wasn't able to do with my father and my brothers and my husbands. But with my son, I was able to see the divine masculine in all its divine perfection. You know, his innate desire to protect me, and you know how proud he is of me and how much he loves me. I mean, to me, that's what divine masculine is. And I got to see that at a raw place in this little tiny child that's 5 who thinks he's grown trying to take care of his mama. And to me, it just healed all of my daddy issues, and it healed all of those issues because I got to see the divine masculine. It's all in its raw, authentic power. And there's nothing like that childlike energy of the masculine. You know, it's like what we all of us little girls want inside is to be taken care of and loved unconditionally. You know, and
Don't you think men want that? Isn't that really what we all want as human
that's
beings?
what we all want. That's what we all want. We're just conditioned so differently. I mean, I think the paradigm is changing now. But you know, men are kind of taught to suffocate and disassociate from their feelings so that they can provide and care for the family. You know, they got to do whatever it takes. They're not allowed to feel. And women, we are taught to, you know, feel our feelings, but we're the nurturing element, and the male is the action element. So the divine is where the vision comes in, but the manifestation completes with divine masculine, because the divine feminine creates it in the workshop of her imagination, but the divine masculine actually puts it into action. And the action step is the most powerful step of manifestation. It's the showing up, which takes the masculine inside of all of us to show up. You know, you know that your journey has been about showing up, even when you didn't want to, even when you were tired.
Tired or in pain? You know, I speaking of that, I take these hikes every morning, 7 days a week on this mountain. I got to get to 2,900 feet, and I've got a bypass that's blocked in my right leg, 100%. So when I hike at an incline, the pain is severe in my hip and my calf. And it's not because I'm hurting myself. That's how I'm building collateral vessels, right? But the pain is significant. And right now I'm on a 30-day water fast to heal.
I know.
And so my energy was somewhat compromised because of that. And I'm still hiking. I'm just hiking 50%. I'm not going to the second crossover mountain. But the pain is there and it's real, but I refuse. I refuse to just surrender that. I'm not going to surrender my pain. I'm going to win over my pain. That's the masculine, the divine masculine, if I understand you correctly.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know, you could even reframe it just a little bit, because in quantum physics, you have to understand that what you resist or suppress gets bigger. So how could you look at the pain that you're in right now is turning it into purpose?
Exactly.
Right?
Well,
it's like
it's a gift.
It is. So is all of your pain on the right side of your body, or?
Just my right leg, yeah, because that's where I'm 100% occluded. But I love what you said. I got stung by a bee a couple of weeks ago. About 4 weeks ago, I was coaching one of my clients walking the beach, the shoreline in Huntington Beach, where I just relocated from. And I got my first bee sting on the sole of my foot in the middle of coaching. And it was really painful. But I tell you what, I worked through that. I blogged about that pain and I embraced it. And I just allowed myself to literally like just have the awareness of it, accept it, actually love it for the moment, go, okay, it's not every day. You've never gotten stung by a bee before in this lifetime. Just be present for it. And through that simple process that I just explained, within 7 minutes, all of my pain was gone, totally gone. And the redness and the inflammation disappeared. It was gone. I like self-healed just by changing my thoughts. And I continue my coaching, and it was just a beautiful gift, a beautiful
So how can we do this with your leg? Because the only thing I would love for you to reframe on that is because pain is a messenger. It's not about winning over pain. It's about asking the pain what it has to tell you. Literally sitting with your leg and saying to your leg, and this may sound corny, but saying, what do you have to tell me? Because the right side of your body is coming from a place of the present moment, and the left side of the body is coming from the past. The right hip indicates direction, and the right leg is about forward moving into the future. Okay, the lung, I'm looking at the lungs right now. The right lung is a little compromised. That's about old, there's some old grief there. And I think that has also to do with your direction in life. So sitting down with your leg and saying, what do you have to tell me? And then just don't let your logic answer you. Let your intuition speak within the next 24 hours. When it starts to really flare up, right? So what do you have to tell me? It's like a child tantruming. Tell me what you have to tell me. What is it that you need and want from me? Because to me, every time we develop something inside of our bodies, it's a messenger to get our attention. And it's important because we're going to use that later in life. You healing all of these conditions is going to make you a master teacher. And it's not about overcoming pain. It's about learning to speak to it. And it's about learning to be there with it. It's just like a child. You know, sometimes it just needs to be seen and heard and really appreciated because it's serving you somehow. And if it wasn't serving you somehow, it wouldn't be there. So I realized that my autoimmune disease left when I no longer needed it, not when it was healed. So ask yourself, how much longer do I need this? What does it have to tell me? What is happening right now where I could look at this as a gift instead of something that I'm fighting against? Because as long as I fight against it, I will always fight against it. But if I fight with it because it's me, it's those 4 frequencies again: loyalty, communication, right? Compromise, and attraction. And those 4 frequencies, sitting with yourself and looking at your leg, and like you said, you know, you've grown all of this new material in your body to help you function. That's a miracle, and that should be celebrated. So that when the pain comes back, what else do you have to tell me? What else do you have to tell me? And it's literally like just talking to a child, because your body is literally, it's the cellular memory of who you've been. So now you're ready to go into this next stage of your reality, and you're ready to start not a new chapter, but a whole new book. And that pain that you've experienced, it's ready to come to an end. And the only way to really heal pain is to jump into your divine feminine, where the nurturing is.
Is she not good or what?
You're ready.
I'm in it. I'm here.
You're doing awesome.
I never, ever dreamed that I'd have the courage to do this.
Yeah. But you know what? You're proud of yourself, and that's the most important thing.
Thank you.
You know, sometimes when we grow up and we're not proud of ourselves, we create things in our lives to fix so we can be proud of ourselves. And you overcoming this will be the greatest act of self-love that anyone could ever create. And that's the only thing that matters.
Yeah, you're right. Switching gears here. A few minutes left, and I want to respect your time and our community. I want to thank those that came on live and watched the show and participated. I want to thank those from overseas. I know it's for Adele in South Africa. It's the middle of the night. I don't know where else. Anyone else that's coming in from overseas, please, and in the United States, tell me where you're from, what city or state, what country you're from, so that we can welcome you in a most loving way. Thank you for supporting our show, for supporting both Jessica and I today. Jessica, I'd like to invite you to let people know how they can get a hold of you and spend a few minutes just talking about your tour that's coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're just seeing me for the first time, you can find just my community page here on Facebook, where I just share a lot of teachings and content, and that is Jessica Alstrom Quantum Life Community, and that's right here on Facebook. I also have a big academy where I teach internationally, basically the Me, Myself, and I. It's University of Higher Self. And that is all a virtual school, and that is housed online and here on Facebook. So if you want more information, you can just reach out to me at Join Tika Now, or JessicaAlstrom.com. And if you're excited about the tour, if you've heard about it, we didn't talk too much about it, but what I'm doing is I am taking the fast track of the healing codes on the road. Believe it or not, using frequency and vibration, we can shave 15 years off of the spiritual journey by just getting in alignment with our divine, true frequencies. We can bypass belief systems, and we can bypass the subconscious mind by getting into alignment. Some people call it parallel reality jumping or quantum jumping, but really what it is, and when you look at yourself, is at the basis of you, your love. And everything that's in the way of that is just a filter. You're never actually learning anything on the planet, you're just remembering. And there's a way to remember faster by getting in touch with who you are. So I'm doing 3-day healing, basically workshops all over the world, where we're using some very high level technology to clear the body of fear and old memories, to basically open up the diamond within. It's the alchemy process. So diving into the dirt to find the diamonds, and we're taking this on the road. If you're just hearing about this for the first time, I've got lots of great videos with all the people that are going to be on the road with me, and you can find those on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is Transcendence Wellness Center, Wellness Through Awareness. So that is my YouTube channel, and you can also search Jessica Alstrom, and I've got 300 plus videos if you want to geek out with me on all things quantum. So thank you so much for having me on the show, and I have a feeling you and I are going to work together a little bit offline at some point. For sure.
And I'd like to invite you to come back on the show, because we are out of time. There is one thing I'd like to continue our conversation on is relationships, and how we can, what you have learned about relationships, and how it was, and how you live your life today in a healthier way, and how your relationships have changed because of the healing journey.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, every relationship you have with anyone else is a reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. So until you are healed, you'll always attract those broken relationships. And believe it or not, you're not just in a relationship with other people. You're in relation with money. You're in relation with time. You're in relationship with nature and music and art. And it's really about looking at your convoluted relationship towards yourself and looking at the mirror effect that creates. If you're in unhealthy relationships, you're in an unhealthy relationship with yourself. And so that will always mirror back to you. If people are not seeing and hearing you, or if they're abandoning you, if they're rejecting you, what I realize is that the less I abandoned myself, the less people abandoned me. The less I rejected myself, the more unconditional love I found for my own limits, because we all have limits that we've created for ourselves, physical limits, emotional limits. When I really fell in love with those unconditionally, then that's when other people began to love my limitations as well. So, you know, you're in a relation with everything. And if you're scared of yourself, you're going to be scared of your world. If you can't trust yourself, you're going to have trust issues. If you are sick, you're going to attract sick people. It's just, everything is a mirror. And I think that that's just awesome, because this journey is not about study. It's about responsibility. And that definition is the ability to respond. Can you respond to you in your time of need, in your time of desire? Are you giving to yourself? Are you fulfilling your dreams? Are you cheating on your dreams? Because if you're cheating on your dreams and your hopes and your health, you're going to get cheated on. It's a metaphor. This whole existence is a metaphor. It's a reflection, because the universe is just a mirror. So my relationships are getting a lot better these days, I will tell you.
Yeah.
I'm learning to work well with others, and I have healthy relationships for the first time in my life. You know, I had major intimacy issues my whole life. But look at that word, intimacy. Into me, I see.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
If I've got intimacy issues, I've got an issue with me. It takes a lot of courage to look within. But you know what? It's awesome, because you don't ever have to worry about anyone else. Everybody else is just doing the best they can. They're a projection of you, and they're a reflection of you. And they're trying to figure out themselves. They're trying to work through their own wounding and their own judgments. And it's just time for us to have compassion for that. And the stuff that bothers us about other people, we need to find somewhere within ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, the sad thing is, most of us, a lot of us, at least I had to hit a rock bottom to be willing to start the healing process. You described your story. It was the same thing. You know, wouldn't it be a beautiful world if we lived in one where we're taught this, at least at the school level, in the education process, somewhere we are taught how to just be, how to, speaking the language that you spoke to me today. We're not taught this anywhere. What we're taught is math and science and social studies and history, and we're taught how to live in a matrix, the American dream.
Right.
And it doesn't serve us right.
We're taught codependency from a very early age, that everything that we need is outside of us, and that is actually complete opposite. So there's two matrices. There's the matrix of limitation, and there's the matrix of potential. And again, it comes back to your blog about choice. I can see any problem in my life as potential. We could sit together after the show and look at your leg and look at how much potential lies in the healing of that leg versus the limits of that leg. Because it's just perspective. And when you look in your infinite possibilities of a universe, that gets really exciting. It means I have all choice. And if I have no choice, then I'm going to be conditioned, and I'm going to live a life with a mask on, and I'm going to live a double life, and I'm going to live a life of contradiction and probably disease, because I can't be free in my own body. We're taught at that matrix level, you're not allowed to be free. You're not allowed to be authentic. And over here, it's about being transparent. And that's why I love that you have this show, because you're not just teaching authenticity, you're teaching transparency by doing this show. And to me, transparency is about being able to see all the way through it back to yourself. You know, you may be the mentor, but when someone sees you, they actually see their own greatness. That's the power of a mentor.
That's why we do what we do, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably it's the greatest thing I've done in my life. And, it really teaches me a lot about humility too.
Well, and you need it. And I say that to everyone. I think why we hit rock bottom on our journeys is to eliminate pride, because it takes a lot for us when we're stubborn and we think we know all the answers. And if you think you know all the answers, you don't. And so it takes that rock bottom to basically create humility and strip the pride, because you know what? Then you're vulnerable.
Exactly.
And at that place of vulnerability, that's, to me, unconditional love. And that's what we're all getting to.
We could go another hour, no doubt. you're just a wealth of innate wisdom and experience and knowledge. And I'd love to have you back on so that we could
Sure.
pick where we left off. I'm going to
Yeah.
respect that time. I want to thank you again for joining us. Those that came on live, thank you for being here. It's okay if you don't catch us live. You catch us when you're ready, when you got the time on the replay. Have a beautiful balance of the day wherever you are at. I do want to just make a quick announcement. I've got next Sunday at 12:30, Justin Bauer is going to be on a show. Justin is a retired professional tennis player who won some tournaments in his career. He played Wimbledon, originally born and raised in South Africa. He's a man who has reinvented himself numerous times. He's an entrepreneur. He doesn't live in fear. He goes right after what he wants. He has a positive attitude. He's a mental coach today. He's got his manuscript done. He coaches children. He coaches children athletes on how to hit their peak, how to be the best at what they do, how to make it to the pro level. And this man is just a world of knowledge. Next Sunday at 12:30, we're going to do our show a little differently. He's actually going to be sitting right next to me, side by side. And we're just going to have a conversation. And he's going to share what his life is, his story, and what his knowledge is in the world of living, in mental coaching. So, Jessica, thank you so much for joining me today. Have a beautiful balance of the day, and we'll catch you next time, next Sunday. Real Man, Real Talk, Raw.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
You there?